Hey there, and welcome to this week's Music Career Study Group. My name is Kevin, and joining me is Chris. And this week we are discussing how to pitch your music. And this is a great topic because there's so many different ways that artists need to be able to pitch their music and understand what they're doing around pitching their music. And it's going to be a great conversation, lots of stories. And you might be wondering at this point, what is a music career study group? Well, it's where we can get together weekly. We usually have a defined topic that we're discussing, something that will help the artist community learn and grow. But we want you to participate because it's just not about us talking, it's about us learning from each other. That's what makes it a study group. You bring your notes, we have our notes, and we share.
And we can talk in real time, as I will now do to Dave. Yes, well, these will be archived on YouTube and Facebook. Watch whenever you want. You can watch them as many times as you want.
Yes.
But also ask your questions and give your advice now, too.
Yeah. And as a reminder, as you're joining us, let us know where you're watching from. Say hello in the comments. Say where you're from. Feel free to drop a link to your music. And it's not only a dialogue with us, but we love it when people in the comments section start helping each other out as well, answering each other's questions also. So that's what we're going to do today.
It looks like Aaron might need some help because he's either been pitching his music wrong the entire time or participating in live streams wrong the entire time.
Whatever.
Maybe both.
Maybe both. Yes. Maybe
Hey,
both.
Miles, how's it going? We're hiding in a bathroom at work in Iowa. Yes. You were doing the live stream, right?
Yes. I mean,
Great to see you, Miles.
Who doesn't need an hour-long bathroom break? That doesn't count as your lunch either.
Oh, Aaron's making sure we know it's Iowa, not Ohio.
Iowa? What do you mean? He's in Walla Walla, Washington.
No, Miles.
Oh, Miles. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see. Well, all right. Yeah. Again, if you're just joining us, drop a link to your music, say hi, tell us where you're watching from, and help us out by clicking that share link, giving it a thumbs up or a like wherever you're watching. And let's get as many artists watching the study group as possible, because the more people participating, the more fun it is. Because at the end of the day, music should be fun. Wouldn't you agree, Chris? At least it should have some element of fun.
I don't know if this is the segue into the topic, but I was actually thinking that one of the problems of people making good pitches for their music is they're thinking of music too much in that, hey, it's fun, it's emotive, it's expressive, it's connective, it's collaborative, it's all the good things. And it is. But when you go into pitching mode, it needs to be something else. And so I know that's a lot of what we'll be discussing today.
Yeah. We've got France in the house. I'm not sure. Nasara. I hope I didn't butcher your name there. We have Lauren in Ohio. We've got Canada in the house. Eric's in Canada. Malia, she's watching from Pasadena. Aren't you supposed to be in your own study group right now, Malia? And we've got multiple Canadians. So I've got my Topo Chico, which has now become a tradition. Chris has his mason jar with moonshine.
Moonshine on the rocks.
Yes. So we are ready to go. And again, feel free to weigh in on the comments, like or share this video. That'll help us out, but participate and join in on the conversation. It makes it a whole lot more fun. But this is a great topic. We're talking about how to pitch your music. And, Chris, when we were talking about this, my brain immediately went to sync licensing and maybe secondary to playlist pitching. But the more you and I talked about it, the more I realized it's like we have to do this constantly in so many different circumstances with so many different goals and maybe results in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have this slide right here to say, what are all the things you could pitch for? There's sync licensing, there's playlists, there's press. You want an album review or a gig preview. The gigs themselves, you have to pitch to a talent buyer, booking agent. Sometimes people want to do an influencer marketing campaign where they got to get influencers to share their music in some capacity or shoot videos to their songs. That often takes a pitch. Anytime you want to work with a professional in the industry, whether it's, labels, management, getting a publicist, or if you want to get an endorsement or sponsorship, all of these things and probably a lot more, you need to make a case for your music.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I know when artists think about marketing their music and what they have to do to move their career forward, I think in most cases, erroneously, maybe they think social media first, which social media first can be amazing. But I think that they tend to just do that without a strategy, just, well, I'm supposed to be on social, but realizing there's so many different areas where if you craft a good pitch and know who you're pitching to and do it properly, where you can jump ahead big time and gain exposure, placements and playlists and sync licensing placements. You can get a better gig just by understanding how critical this function is in what we do as musicians.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk a lot about sort of how to begin thinking about this, but there's even like a prior step to even starting to craft a pitch, which I feel like you summed up with this slide here. What is your goal? Like, what are you shooting for when you pitch your music? And it's important to define this early. Why do you think that's so important?
Chris, I want to back up here again and a little bit here and give people some context for our experience with pitching and receiving pitches. Both Chris and I are active artists. We have lots of different musical projects going on. So we are constantly ourselves going through this process with every release. But you and I have been in the industry for a while. We've hosted popular podcasts, blogs, conferences, put on showcases, and have had all sorts of different people for various reasons pitching to us. And I would say that it's probably like 90%, maybe even
Most of
higher.
them
Most
are
of
terrible?
them are terrible.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just feel, sometimes I felt insulted because like you listen to our podcast and that's the pitch you gave me. I mean,
or
how did
even
you
more
miss it all?
insulting, they didn't listen to the podcast and they're
Yes.
pitching.
Yes,
I mean, that's
exactly.
That's likely as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have lots of experience both as pitching and as artists, but also, like I have experience pitching for Sync for CD Baby back in the day, and learned a lot about what that world wants from a pitch. And we'll get into that some today, but we've done it as artists and we've had friends both in the media who have commented to us like, I hate it when artists do this. This drives me crazy. And so it's going to be a good conversation. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the Music Career Study Group. Let us know where you're watching from. Say hi in the comments. If you have questions about what we're talking about, feel free to drop it in. Or if you have some experience saying, I did this and I pitched my music this way and it worked. Or I've been doing this. It seems like it's the right thing to do and I'm not getting results. Maybe we can have a little intervention here live.
Yeah.
In the Music Career Study Group.
So we'll tell them how to pitch, but before we get that, maybe a little bit of the why, which was
yes.
What is your end goal? Well, you yesterday were sort of saying you think this is super important. Why?
Yeah, I think one thing that artists tend to do is, I think when they're pitching their music, they forget that they are talking to an industry professional. These are not fans, okay? They are not looking to become fans of your music. Now, they potentially could, but usually it's a professional that is serving a professional function. And so oftentimes I feel like artists, when they've pitched to us for various things, I'm like, what are you wanting me to do with this? Like, there's lots of things going on in my life. What was this? You wanted to be on that showcase that we're planning? You wanted to be featured on the blog? You wanted to be a part of our live stream? What is this for?
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish? And ultimately, what are you looking to accomplish? Because just saying, I want money, that's not good enough. That, everybody wants money. I want fame. That's not good enough. Get it down to the specific. What are you trying to accomplish for the ultimate goal? And that could take on a whole bunch of different looks,
Yeah, well, I think pitches and results from pitches can accumulate for sure to sort of a bigger effect, but you have to have a very specific goal for the individual pitch. It shouldn't be, hey, here's my music. So hopefully that's obvious to people, but based on 98% of the pitches we've received in our life from other artists, it's not obvious. So
Yeah, and I think, even and we'll get into this more, but even your goal, like I know yesterday when we were planning for this, I was talking to Chris about a band I was in here in Portland that's had a lot of sync placements. And a lot of them looked good by name, but maybe they weren't the big discovery moment. But it didn't matter because when I was so that was the sync world. But when I was reaching out to bookers, it was like, yeah, that the NFL did use our song. The NFL used our song in a video. It was a web video. We got $500, but I could say the NFL used our song.
Yeah.
ABC used our song in a show. It was barely audible. It was not a discovery moment, but we could say ABC, the NFL, we had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame music. So it's like some of those things, like your goal might not be just money. And I think oftentimes as artists are planning these pitches, they're only thinking money, wild success, and not thinking like the incremental things that help tell a story and build your artist brand. So that's what we're gonna talk about some today. We've got lots of different sections, and why don't we just start? Because I know some of these stories will come up as we
Sure.
go. And
So
again,
one
if you're, I was just gonna give a shout out to Norman watching in LA, and we've got a question here.
Yeah, I think this is a great place to begin before we move on to our slide, which is kind of kick off the how to do it. But this is a great question because I feel like this topic is so important because artists run the risk of forgetting what the sort of original or the whole connotation of the word pitch even is, which is a sales pitch. I think we use the term pitch in the music industry so often, like pitch to the editors, pitch to Spotify, pitch to Amazon, that again, we run the risk of thinking of it as this sort of automated process where you just drop a song into a conveyor belt. And if you're lucky, something happens. And if not, well, the system is against you and people don't like independent. You can spin some negative story from it, but ultimately it's a sales pitch.
Mhm.
And just like an insurance salesman or a travel agent has to first make their prospective client trust that they have the expertise to make good recommendations. And then once they've done that, they can actually make a recommendation in such a way where hopefully that prospective client says, yes, that's the solution I need. So it is exactly like a sales pitch for your music. Unlike certain kinds of sales, it shouldn't be like high pressure. It's not, you're not like a used car salesman. It should be, fairly, I guess not high pressure, but it definitely should be convincing.
My song's gonna fall apart the second you drive it off the lot. They're gonna have buyer's remorse big time. Yes, it is. I think this is a good question because I think maybe the music. I think social media has taught people to be too casual when it comes to this, because these are professional people trying to provide a professional function. And even a playlist curator, even if it's like just a user generated playlist, I think you still need to approach it like a professional, because you don't know who that person is. And chances are it'll just make you more accountable for how you communicate.
You're getting a shout out for your playlist placement.
Thanks, Malia.
Or not playlist, sync placements.
Yeah. And Steve here, he said he had songs professionally recorded with the demo singer and want to pitch to established artists. That's another way you could be pitching your music. That's big business in Nashville. Just songwriters pitching to have other artists record their music on albums. So
songwriter here from Austin. Hey
Wayne. All right. So Chris, first up, we have some things you need. And this has just been
here they are.
Gathered over the years from when I've worked with people and they've said, please send me this. And this is what I want. And you'll find out that there is no one way, perfect way to pitch your music. So usually when I have a new album, I make a Dropbox folder. Inside that folder, it contains all the assets. It has the MP3s of the album. It has the WAV files. You will get people that will say, send me an email with an MP3 as an attachment. You'll get people that say, send me a link to a WAV file. You'll get people that say, send me a link to Spotify. So I create a folder with all the files. And then it's always a good time to get an updated bio and photos, because sometimes depending on what you're pitching, that'll be included as well. And relevant links things like your website, just getting that all organized together, because every time I release music, I go to that doc and that folder constantly, and having it all right there makes the pitching process easier, because it's a lot of work, and it's not, honestly, it's not fun. It's
It's
not
not.
like, yay, I get to go try and be the salesman for my music. But simplifying the process, I think, really over the years doing this has helped me make pitching easier. And also, a lot of these pitches come up like, I've got this, especially if you're talking about sync licensing, they'll be like, I've got this opportunity. I need this track for a TV show. It's going to be locking tomorrow. It's like urgent. Can you get me these things?
Yeah.
And having them at the ready, you don't want to be like scrambling for 5 hours trying to figure out where your files are. That's just, you're going to lose opportunity.
Get all this boring clerical work done all at once and all housed in a nice place together. One of the things on your list was updated artist bio, which I think is useful in things like booking or, trying to get a management deal or something. It's the story of the artist. But a lot of times you're pitching, it's for a particular track, in which case you might want to write the story of your song. What's it about? What emotions does it evoke? Who does it sound like? Even things like beats per minute, keys, all those sort of things that might help connect the particular song to a usage, you should write down as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned bio about like a particular song, or I think it's important to remember this is not a bio for fans. So you don't want to give, I mean, you shouldn't be giving your entire life story in a bio either anyway, but this is something that needs to be brief and hits the high notes. Like, if it's not exciting by mid-sentence one, then you've lost them. I mean, we all have email. We all have people in our lives that email, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's 4 paragraphs here. That's me.
Like I can hear you, Kevin. I can hear you criticizing me.
No, you do not. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, you want to keep it succinct. Think about this professional that needs to know, make quick decisions. All these people most likely are making quick decisions. And so that list we have is going to help you just get organized. So there it is again. You can screenshot it.
And in the interest of making quick decisions, they need to be able to make a decision in the first place, which means another thing that has to be quick is them getting all the stuff in one place. So if you've got a website with a great press page, if you've got an artist branded email, like instead of your Gmail or your Hotmail or whatever else, you'll look more professional if it's, your name at yourwebsite.com. And then obviously you need a list of people to contact in the first place. Later on today, we'll talk about how to find the right people to contact, but that's the place to begin.
Yeah. So that will help you simplify the process, get organized, because as I've experienced, Chris is just warming up. As I've experienced, a lot of these things come at you fast. And it's just a discipline I had, like, because I found I needed it over the years of like, every time I'm pitching, I get asked for these things. I'm going to go ahead and make some folders. I'm going to go ahead and make the things available. And, then when I need to tweak it for each individual pitch, I already have the foundation of everything.
Speaking of tweaking for the pitch, so Miles is saying he's used ChatGPT to help craft something for Spotify and Amazon playlist pitching. Got him off to a good start. He fed it the song description and lyrics and then asked for a 500 character thing. I think that's great. And particularly for people who have a hard time beginning and are intimidated by writing, it's a perfect way to get something to start and then you tweak it.
Yeah. I know artists have a hard time writing about themselves. Using a tool like ChatGPT and putting in the bullet points, like, here's all my career bullet points, put them in the biggest first, because ChatGPT tends to look at lists and prioritize the list like you numbered it as one being important and the other ones being less important. But just give it some 5-6 key things to know about you, your music, and accomplishments, and it does an excellent job. And you don't have to take what it does, but it does help get the juices flowing and makes it easier to write.
Yeah, Norman. So this kind of alludes to something on our next slide. Will simple but effective work? oftentimes that's the only thing that will work. And so we have this slide about how to pitch. And one of the things is to keep it clear and concise. No one has time for very, very long-winded emails or pitches, particularly these tastemakers who have a 1,000 other artists trying to get a hold of them that day. So
yeah. So number one on this list on how to pitch, I think, is if you hear one thing today, only one thing that will greatly improve your pitching of your music, whether it's to get a gig, sync placements, playlist placements, put their needs first. So if you're going to put their needs first, you have to understand what their true needs are. And remember, these are professional people by and large, most of them, and they have a job to do. They have bosses that are breathing down their neck too. They have goals to achieve. They've got a whole list of things that they have to do as well. The last thing they need is a bunch of goofballs filling up their inbox with garbage. That really is frustrating, but they also need music, and they need a lot of it. And if you understand their goals and objectives, you can craft a pitch that speaks to that helps solve a problem for them. And I think most artists, when they're pitching for themselves, they're trying to think, this solves my problem of getting noticed. This solves my problem of getting more fans. But those people don't care about that. What they care about is their problem and their job that they have to do. So when you frame it that way, you start to see where the opportunities, where your music can solve a problem for them, and your pitch will be so much more effective.
Miles is making me laugh. He said, this sounds a lot like marriage. And yeah, I suppose in some ways it is. One thing that I wonder, it might be helpful. You've basically connected the first two bullets here, putting their needs first and understanding what they even do so that you know what their needs are. I wonder if it might be helpful for us to give a few examples of really bad pitches. Some that I can think of are, you and I used to have a podcast where pretty much the whole content of the podcast was talking to or about specific artist stories where they'd done something kind of unique to succeed.
Yes.
Maybe using a new tool, a new marketing tactic. So we really wanted the like nuts and bolts of how someone did something. And we'd get pitches all the time from artists or managers being like, my artist has this cool new song out. Will you guys play it? Like, no, that's not what we do. Clearly, you've never listened to this podcast. Another one I can think of is like let's say a Spotify playlist or a third-party playlister has 20 different playlists. Maybe they're all folk, but one is like acoustic folk covers. One is upbeat folk for summer vibes. Another one is like sad, depressing study folk. And you just send them your folk song. I mean, good enough that you've connected the genre, but you're not really helping them that much, because the best thing to do is say, this is for, not this is for it, but I think this would be a good fit on this particular playlist.
Yeah. Yeah. It was always mind blowing how many publicists, people that should know better, who their job is to pitch, would pitch me to feature an artist on that podcast, saying they loved the podcast and thought this artist's music would be an amazing addition to the podcast. I'm like, you suck at your job. I feel like I should email that artist and tell them that the publicist they hired sucks, because they're just spamming people. Obviously, they had not listened to our podcast, and obviously they were not fans of it either. Like, they would just gush about it, and I'd realize they're just copying and pasting. Yeah. So that to me, it's like, that guarantees you will not get an opportunity. And if you go about it poorly enough, it might make that person block you, remember your name, and if you try emailing again, they'll be like, I'm never helping that artist, because clearly they're just spamming everybody.
No bad grammar may be allowable depending on the marriage. But Miles, unfortunately, married an elementary education major. One last bad pitch example I can think of is writing to a talent buyer at a venue and just being like, hey, can I play there? Maybe you sell them on your music a little bit, but it always helps to start with a date or a date range to get their kind of imagination going, to see where it might fit on the calendar. So that would be another thing.
Yeah. And that was That was actually the big aha moment for me way back in the day. I had a band here in Portland, Oregon that I was trying to get booked at clubs. And early on in the podcast that we had, we interviewed the club booker at like the premier club here in Portland that had national acts, but also local acts. And it was the place everyone wanted to play. And as I sat there listening to her detail her job, I'm like, wow, this job sucks. I wouldn't want to be a club booker. um, she's got a lot of pressure on her to get people in the place every night and buying drinks and food and packing it out. And I'm like, that's stressful. And so the last thing that person wants is a band that's going to say, oh, yeah, I can pack your place out easy, who are misrepresenting themselves or who are just wasting their time. But if you could help them out, solve that problem of, hey, I can get 30 more people who will be drinking beer to come out when we're on the bill. That's something is tangible to them. That's something's like, okay, the other band I'm going to put you with, they can average about 120. So with your 30, we got 150 in the room. Perfect. Let's do it. So those are the kind of things that artists tend to do that really frustrate professionals when trying to pitch their music.
Miles is giving us a bit of a shout out here, asking viewers to like and share the stream because that does help us a lot. So if you're watching and enjoying it, please do. Your booking comment reminded me of one more little detail I wanted to say. Sometimes their needs may be not immediately obvious. And I'm thinking of a conversation you and I had with Jeff Toohey, who books for the Cisco venues in New England.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing he told us is like, yeah, being good and getting people is great if you can sell me that. But more important to those venues that have somewhat of a built-in audience is, can you keep them drinking? Can you be the band that you show up and no one is there because of you, but because you're there, literally no one will leave. So that's another, potential goal they might have and something you may need to sell them on if you can do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It might not be just, am I a good option, but how am I a better option, or how can I fit the need of that venue? And yeah, I remember that interview, and he was talking a lot about like, yeah, the places he books for tend to be destinations, but if the band sucks, people tend to leave. If the band's good, people show up, their friends start showing up, and it just is a party vibe all night long. And for him, he was looking for the artist that is going to be entertaining and basically drive the party. So, can you put that? Yeah. Okay. How to pitch. No bad grammar. You would not believe how often I've got, I remember one time, Chris, where I forwarded you an email that I received, and it was like, I couldn't even read half the words. It was like, clearly they had just gotten a bunch of email lists and were just on their phone frantically typing as fast as they could. Feature my music, and then hitting send without even reading it. And it was immediately delete. Never would read that email and take that artist seriously, because if you don't have enough time to proofread your email to me, I don't have enough time to listen to your music. I mean, have some courtesy there.
Well, I know that, grammatical practices vary based on, age demographic and cultural demographic and stuff. But like, it gets to a point where if your email or your message looks exhausting before I even start, I am not going to read any of it. Like, so just pay attention to that level of grammatical accuracy, that it doesn't look exhausting from the very start.
Yeah, I'm not talking about one typo. I mean, come on, it's the internet. We all make typos. I'm talking about, there was like broken words. It was like all a mess. I'm like, what on earth?
There's a good tip. Run your pitch through ChatGPT just to proofread it and fix it.
Yeah. That's a great way to use it. One thing on this list on how to pitch: no attachments unless requested. This is one thing that I found in the sync licensing world when I've been pitching for sync, is that people are all over the place on how they like to receive music. There's some music supervisors that want Spotify links. There's some of them that want SoundCloud links. There's some that want MP3s. There's some that want a wave. There's some that might even still request a CD. especially if they've synced a couple things from you, they might want, like, hey, we've got a good relationship going. Go ahead and send me it if you've got a hard copy that I could keep sitting on my desk. I had one music supervisor, so it was a few years ago, but they still liked CDs because they liked seeing the artist's music on their desk. And it was kind of like the artists that they knew were a good go-to. Like, if I can't think of anything else, I'm going to go to this pile. So how you can go about that is, when you're reaching out to somebody, if you don't know their preference, you can include a link, but let them know that, hey, if you'd prefer to receive my music another way, let me know. I've got it everywhere. Just a little statement at the end like that would be fine. Starting out a cold pitch with a Spotify link is probably your best bet. And if you're worried that, hey, maybe they're an Apple Music user, chances are they probably have both. If they're like in the industry to some extent, then, you could probably stick with Spotify. But if you want to put on a SoundCloud link, like a private link, like maybe it's not released yet, you could do that as well.
Yeah, one thing we have here is to be clear and concise, which Norman was asking about earlier. This is so important because, again, these people are getting so many messages. You don't want to tire them out before they begin reading. So, like, 4 sentences is a great thing to aim for. The order of the information you include will differ depending on what you're pitching for, but I'd say generally like who you are and what makes you very unique. Acknowledgement that you know who they are and what their needs are, how your music is a great fit for their need. Here's how to follow up with me if you're interested. Thank you. That kind of format, I think, generally works. More creative than what I said, but
Yeah.
that's a good shape to start with.
Well, and going to speaking to be clear and concise, to do this effectively, you really have to put their needs first and understand their work. So if you're not familiar with how music supervisors work, a lot of times they'll be working on 1 or 2 bigger projects that really pay the bills. And then they might have a couple other projects that are smaller pay, have smaller music budgets, but maybe allow them more musical freedom and creativity. Excuse me. And so my point here is that they could be working on multiple projects, some that are very intense, high stress, big budget, some that are more casual. And you need to, if you're pitching to them, you need to state what you're pitching for, because they don't want to have to figure it out. They can be very different musically what they're working on. In fact, a music supervisor that I've known for years, great guy. It's sort of this frustrating situation where he loves my band's music, but he's working on something that a production that's based in New Mexico, and they're looking for traditional Navajo music with this like modern twist for the show. Obviously, that's not what I do. So he's not going to use my music. It's not worth me even pitching, even though I have a great relationship with him. Until he's on a show that could potentially use my music, I'm not going to go there with that. But so understanding what they're working on, watching the show, if it's a show, listening to the actual playlist, if it's a playlist, and being specific and concise. I am pitching for this show because you've been using music that is a lot like mine. I love the music direction of the show. Think my track will fit in. Here's a link. Something.
Speaking of here's a link, is it rude to send a Linktree link?
I think you can include that in your signature or something if they want to go more. But to me, you're still asking them to do work, because if I click Linktree, now I have to
make a choice.
Unless it's just the links to the tracks. If it's like the track on Spotify, the track on Apple Music, that's a way to like, here's a link to the track on in all the places. Yeah. That would be acceptable. But basically, don't send them a Linktree that's like meant for your fans.
Yeah, if they have to make choices along the way, it's a bad idea. Eliminate choices.
Yeah.
Let's see, what do we have next? Follow any posted instructions. So this is a good reminder. Sometimes playlists will have very specific instructions, fill out this form on this website or email me here. Venues often have, instead of wanting you to reach out to their email, they may have a booking form on the website. There's all sorts of instances where there will be clear instructions. So follow those if they're available. Otherwise, you do your research, find the contact, and make kind of the best pitch that you think you can make. And then you kind of already alluded to this, but please customize your messages. There's so many cut and paste jobs in this world. You were mentioning the bad publicist who didn't even know what the podcast was she was pitching to. So don't cut and paste. Or
Yeah.
if you do, cut and paste into a document and then tidy it up for this person and before you send it.
Yes. Amelia was saying there's a lot of talk amongst the media composer community about cold call emails, which are so generic and spammy. It's insulting. It does harm for some folks. Yeah. I think that, like, going back to the organizational thing, what I'll tend to do is have a document where as I've written pitches, I'll put it in there. And when new pitches pop up, I will cater that pitch in the doc, not in the email, because there's the chance you can accidentally hit send thinking you're done before you've tailored it. And I will change it right there in the doc, read it and be like, okay, good. That way I'm not like writing fresh every time. So it's not like you can't reuse pitches, but you need to make sure that any particulars are updated to the person you're emailing. What's it for?
And
why?
keeping it short helps you make sure you're not cut and pasting, because I feel like the people who are guilty of the cut and paste job are usually multi-paragraph pitches. So
yeah, and I've gotten the email before where it's like, hey John, it was great meeting you at some conference
that you weren't at.
Well, I even might have been there.
Yeah.
In fact, it's like I think the ones I've received like this, I've been there, and it's clearly they just are going down and sending the same email to everybody they met. And I'm like, dude, I'm just going to hit the delete button right now. Because if you didn't have a chance to verify, I don't have a chance. I'm too busy to follow up for you. So
speaking of follow up, that's the last thing on this slide. We have a few more slides, but when you pitch, you can't always assume that one communication is enough. Again, these people are busy. You probably know from your own email inbox or DMs on Instagram. Messages sometimes go unnoticed because you don't have a chance to actually open them in the moment. So it is okay to wait a week or two, follow up, maybe another week or two, follow up again. I would not keep doing that, indefinitely, but a few follow-ups is totally fine. And actually, if your music is a good fit for them, you're doing them a favor because you're just giving them another chance to find you as the solution to their need.
Yeah. And one thing about follow-up, based on what the activity is, you absolutely, well, all of these pitches you need to follow up. And this is where I think it's important to get it organized, because there was one time where I was doing an enormous amount of playlist pitching. I created this Google Doc and I had a link to the playlist. I had their contact info, and I had a date where I initially reached out. I think I had a link to the song I pitched to them because it might be different based on the playlist. And I had a box of when I had followed up and if I had followed up, and then the result I got. Have I heard back from them? No. Did I hear back from them? Yes. They said, no way. Or they said, interesting, I'll check it out. Do I need to follow up again? So I just had this organized. And what I found is that even when in my own brain, putting together this doc, I felt like, oh man, I must have pitched 100 playlists. And I was like, no, actually, now that I see it here and I've organized it, I pitched 10. And I got some hits off of that. But I was like, I think a lot of times artists in our disorganization think we've done more work than we actually have. And that's one thing that getting organized with pitching helped me do, is that realizing, hey, getting 2 hits out of 10 pitches, that's actually a great result. I'm not sure. Is my internet?
No, I can see
okay.
fine.
It was kind of freezing on my screen. So yeah, understanding that, if you've got, if you feel like, oh man, I've been pitching all night, I must have done 100 playlists. It's like when you get organized and realize, okay, I did these 10. I haven't followed up on these 6. I'm going to follow up. That was my second follow-up. Still didn't hear anything. I'm probably going to let that one go for now. But on sync licensing, that quick follow-up is really key, because a lot of times they saw your first email. They might have even clicked on the link and liked what they heard, but they are so busy and like in the moment, especially if they're working on TV shows. because those can be like, hey, the music's being cleared today, the show is locked 2 days from now, and then it airs the day after, you know.
Well, those shifting needs can happen in press too, where like you may write hoping for a show preview at your local arts weekly, and they may say no, 6 weeks out, and then it's a week away, and the show they were going to write about got canceled, and now they need to scramble to write something. You checking back in, as long as they didn't say no, we're not going to cover it at all because we don't like you, then you checking back in and being giving them another chance, maybe doing them a favor as well. You also said that thing about artists kind of lose track of how much work we've done, and we think we've sent 100 pitches when really it's 10. Reminds me of the one time I did my own press. It was so exhausting that I went back to using a publicist. But so there are people who will step in to do this pitching work for you, but then you still have the trouble of having to pitch them. Here's why I'm an artist you want to be the publicist for. Or in sync licensing, I don't want to do all these pitches myself. Well, then you need a sync licensing agency, and you'll have to pitch them. So there's always some amount of kind of salesmanship involved, even if you're outsourcing it eventually.
Yeah. Miles said, in our disorganization, we have done more work than we actually, or I think we've done more than we actually have. That is a premise statement of an amazing productivity book. Maybe I'll have Chat GPT write it for me. Aaron said, I've heard a lot of music supervisors don't like the messages so much. Any tips on specific ways to message them, like look for their email or use their contact page or something? When you say messages, are you specifically referring to text messages? I would not text somebody professionally unless I have met them personally and we exchange numbers in that moment. If I got their number from a friend or another artist, I would not text them. Email is fine. A lot of these things, we've got how to find pitches. I think we've got a slide about that, don't we?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay. I'll save that for when we get to that slide. So let's see. Do we have any other questions here before we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, and if they meant DMs, like
yeah,
I would say no to that too, because it's almost too casual. They're easy to ignore. They're easy to lose. Like an email is just tuck it away in a folder if you're interested. Easier to sort through.
Yeah. Steve has got a good question. I've been told not to release my songs on any platforms that are being pitched because if it's picked up by that artist, that artist would just want it to feel new and fresh when they release it, basically. That can be true. Not always. If you build up a reputation as a songwriter, there's a lot of like songwriters in Nashville that will have released their music, like their songs, and you go to their Spotify page and it's like, nobody has listened to this, but then it gets on a cut like of a huge country album.
Mm-hmm.
And that version of the song is mega famous, but still their version is still the original. So sometimes that happens.
And I usually like those versions much more.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I usually go the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to start a fight here, but I prefer people's covers of Dylan's songs than Dylan's versions himself.
You like the big pop country production.
Hey, Guns N' Roses covered Bob Dylan.
Oh, that's true. They did.
It's not always country. Let's see. What's our next slide? Because we've
got a good one here. So this is sort of the emotional reality of pitching. First, you will face rejection. You'll face lots and lots of rejection. As you said, if you were to pitch 10 times and get 2 yeses, that's an amazing percentage, a good hit rate. So you have to understand if they reject you, and they probably will in most cases, it's not necessarily because they don't like your music. It's more likely that your music doesn't fit their needs. So that's kind of the first thing to get your mind around. A person may love your music, but it doesn't fit their need. Like you mentioned, the music supervisor in the Southwest, and your music wouldn't work for that.
Yeah.
But, so, it's an easy thing to say. I don't know how you tell people develop thick skin. I still sometimes get hurt at rejection, but rejection gets easier. So practice it. Practice being rejected by making more and more pitches.
Yeah. And I think this is also why that being organized, while you were saying that, I was thinking this is why being organized is helpful. because you said 2 out of 10 being an amazing hit rate. If you just thought, okay, I'm organized, so I can sit down every evening and take 10 minutes, 1 minute per a pitch. You know, I I have a list, or maybe one night you spend time finding the contact information, 10 minutes. The next night you craft a pitch for each. But if you're organized, it just becomes something that you can do as a part of your daily routine. And so it's not like every time, oh, I should probably pitch music. Oh man, I haven't done anything. It becomes this big, arduous task that it's like, I don't want to do it. It's going to take me 2 hours just to get everything organized before I can send 2 pitches and get rejected. A lot of this is just trying to make it simple because you need to do a lot of it. You will face rejection, and that's good. Rejection just means those are the opportunities that weren't for you. You're looking for the ones that are for you.
That's a great way to look at it. You're kind of winnowing. So yeah, and there is one opportunity for which you're pitching in any moment, and there are zillions of songs out there that could potentially meet that need. So it's not personal. I think we've already established it's a numbers game. So just keep trying. The more darts you throw, the more likely you are to hit a bullseye. And that direct no, if you do get rejected, can be very helpful, particularly if it comes with a reason. First of all, it's helpful because you know a door is closed for this, and maybe stop wasting your time trying to push it open again. But if they say it's because we didn't think the mix was up to, snuff, like maybe you need to work on your mix skills more, or it was a little too slow tempo for what we need. Maybe you adjust what your conception of a happy song is, and that's helpful for future pitches. There's a lot of ways in which the information they give you along with the rejection can help you in the future.
Yeah. In that document, when I was doing all that playlist pitching, I would say, did they respond? What was the response? Yes, no, or maybe, or whatever. And I very much appreciated the people that said no. And oftentimes it was they didn't think it fit the vibe of their playlist. Of course, they were dead wrong, because I would not have pitched them had I known that it didn't fit their playlist. So, in my mind, I had to correct their misunderstanding of music genre.
Which every artist probably says to defend their ego, but in your case is probably true because you have sync licensing experience.
Well, and with playlist, it would be like, I actually did the work and listened to their playlist. A lot of times I'd find in my pursuit of finding a playlist that we would fit, found a lot of great playlists that I liked. And so I would give them a listen, because that was one thing. If you're pitching for a playlist, listen to the playlist. And then all you have to say is say, hey, I was checking out your playlist, really love the mix of music. My band makes similar music, and I think our track would find a nice home there. And I'd love for you to check it out and consider including it in your playlist. There's your pitch right there.
There it is. You wrote it.
There it is. Take that, use it. And that's what I did. And so that's why people like, oh, especially user-generated playlists, which are people that are not professional music curators that just make big playlists that, for whatever reason, that it got big on Spotify. I have one for, we won't go into that today, but I've got one it's the Ultimate Kids Dance Party playlist that I just stumbled into, and now it's got a huge following.
That is a keyword-rich playlist title.
But so when you reach out to people like that, who aren't necessarily professional curators, when you compliment them on their taste in music, they feel like, oh, that makes me feel good. Also, the key thing I forgot, and we probably should have added this to the list, but it doesn't apply to everything you pitch to, but media and playlist. I always say, if you add my song, I will promote your playlist to our fans and let them know that they should check it out. And oftentimes they're like, heck yeah, I want more people to know about my playlist. Well, that media could be the thing too.
That alludes to a point we have later here. Be willing to work after the placement, and you can promise this work ahead of getting the placement. It's, if your blog publishes a review of my album, I will share it to my followers. If you book me at your venue, I will spend this much on advertising. If, whatever, if this, I will this.
Yes.
So not only should you know what you can realistically deliver on, but then you also have to do the work to do it after the fact. But Yeah, that's an extra thing too. For instance, the Spotify direct pitching process, they do like to know exactly what your marketing plan is to drive traffic to Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point, because that's probably something where every artist, if you're, releasing music properly, are coming across a pitching form is in Spotify for artists for your new release. And they ask those questions, and you're probably not going to get their attention if you say, I'm spending $1,000 driving people to Apple Music because all my fans are on Apple Music, but feature me on Spotify. That's not what they want to see. They want to know that this is a mutually beneficial relationship. So that's something to include in a lot of pitches. Like, yeah, we plan, if it's media, they want to see how, you're building a buzz around something, so it feels like they're covering something that is worthwhile, and that you're driving traffic to their site. Oftentimes, I know that back a few years back, Chris and I both had success by having a music video and reaching out to various press outlets and offering up the debut of the music video on their website, meaning they're going to post it and we're going to send all our fans there to check it out. And media like, sure, that's a great idea. We get more traffic, we get more eyeballs on our content, and people clicking ads and stuff, and we get the feature.
Yeah. Miles has a question that I think alludes to a few of the other bullet points here. It's on the topic of your goals. What's a good goal to start with? I'm a small potatoes kind of person. I don't know what a good direction is. Streaming numbers, sales, make the right connections. So I don't think there's a correct answer here, but it does speak a little bit to what we have as proper expectations and leveraging your results no matter what. Like, not every pitch has to be, and probably won't be, like the golden ticket to your success.
Mm-mm.
So it's okay for a pitch to be for an opportunity that may only get you 20 extra streams on Spotify a month. Like, that's a perfectly reasonable thing. That's not too small potatoes, because many pitches can, again, sort of accrue to have a bigger effect. Pitching your song for a Super Bowl commercial, that's going to make you a lot of money, probably get you some notoriety. That's a big goal. And that's okay too, if it's realistic and you have the connections and it perfectly fits. But yeah, I think just have realistic expectations for one, that many of these pitches will not often pan out to be what we imagine, because we're dreamers, right? We always think the next thing's going to be it and my life will be completely easy from this point on.
Still waiting for that.
Yeah. And if they don't pan out to that, it's okay, because as this other bullet point says, leverage the results no matter what. And I think a good example of that is, Kevin, when you were saying both of your bands have had a ton of sync placements in TV shows and films and stuff like that, where some of them have been more prominent and recognizable, but sometimes it's just in the background at a bar scene that lasts for 10 seconds and people can't even probably hear the vocals. No one's Shazamming that. You don't get any discovery from it. Maybe you don't even get much money from it. But now you have a sync resume. You've got 20 things on there saying featured here, featured here, featured here. So the point of all that together is being leveraged to show that your music is very syncable, which has long-term benefits.
Yeah, there's so much that, like, even just a strategy, as you were talking, you could build a strategy around it. Okay, what are the low-hanging fruit things that I can pitch for that may not even pay, or they don't pay much, but it gives me some industry credibility. So for the next bigger pitch, they're like, oh, this music has been tested. This person is easy to work with. They actually do have the rights to their music, because we're not really getting into like any specifics of each industry, but when it comes to especially like sync licensing, there's a lot on the line if you misrepresent yourself for that music supervisor. They could lose their job if you say, I own this all outright, and they find out you don't. But anyway, so when they see, hey, we've been featured by the NFL on ABC, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame used one of our tracks. That's like, okay, this is a band that writes music that people like to sync. They're obviously easy to work with because they've had lots of placements. I will give them a little bit extra consideration. And so, yeah, as you start pitching people and having little hits and successes, start including that in your resume. And you don't need to put that in the initial pitch. You could say, like, that could be a postscript on the email, or it could just be a second sentence. Hey, as an FYI, we've been featured here. So we're not a bunch of slackers that are going to screw you over.
Well, and that's just helping in all the filtering that these people need to do in their lives, of weeding out the stuff that's nonsense or that's not going to work for them. So definitely worth putting those sort of bragging points in there. Did we get to everything on this list?
I think so. We need to get to the last one, because how
There
to
it
find
is.
contacts. So how? And this was a question. Where'd it go? Malia had extremely basic question. Where do I go to pitch? So this is where I think this is what ends up like trimming the fat, and most people just don't want to do this work.
Because they won't do this part. This is, yeah.
Yes,
totally
they won't
right.
do this part. All right, here's how you're going to find people to pitch. If it's a TV show, a film, films can be a little harder because the production can take years, and the music supervisor might be engaged more heavily at different times. But TV shows are quick, and the person's probably rampantly busy, and the TV show is probably still editing and locking episodes as the first ones are airing for the season. But you can go to IMDb, find the show that you've been liking and liking the music, feel like your music is a perfect match. The music supervisor will be listed in IMDb. You can just Google that stuff. You can go to X and search that. A lot of them have accounts there. They could be on social. And I'm not saying go find them on social so you can immediately spam them on social. Oftentimes at these profiles, they might have instructions on how to properly pitch to them. And so, first of all, you're just trying to find the person. If they're on X and they're talking a lot about music, interact with them. Start building a relationship with them, knowing that, hey, you're actually there for the music because you like the music that they've curated. Perfect example right now, a show called The Bear. Great show. Highly recommend it. The music supervision on that show is phenomenal. The music is sort of like another character in the show. And so what did I do? I immediately like, who's doing this music supervision? They're using a lot of 90s rock bands, which our bigger records are from the 90s and get lumped in with groups like REM, which is all over The Bear. And what else? Counting Crows and all that. So those bands are featured prominently in The Bear. We got compared to them a lot. So it creates an opportunity to try and pitch. Music is a big piece of the show. That's somebody that I would try to target. I sort of hit a dead end though, Chris, with that one, because it's the producers that are doing all the music supervision, and the whole article is about how they can barely hang on, but they love music so much that they're just wanted to do it. And
so they don't actually
like
have a music supervisor?
Well, they might in season 3 now, but the article I read, they did not. And so I'm like, that's going to be tough to get through to those guys. Those guys are just grabbing music they love, getting it cleared and moving on.
Oh, this person discovered Wilco after watching The Bear. Nice.
Yeah, Wilco's all over it because The Bear takes place in Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago, right.
Wilco's all over it. Radiohead. Oh, there's some great Radiohead placements that are just make the scene.
You mentioned IMDb, which also reminded me there's another website you probably remember. I don't remember what it's called, that tracks music usage in shows and film. Do you remember what that's called?
Yeah, I've got it bookmarked here. There's several. One's called TuneSat. And it's a place where you can upload and see if your songs have been used. But I think they have, I'm not going to open up and dig around. I think they have some info there. But if you just search song and TV show, there's a couple websites that pop up that will help you find information about shows and the music and in there, and you can find it.
Yeah. And then another interpretation of online databases is there are lists out there that you can either access for free. Sometimes they're paid to get playlist curator contact info, or contact info for venue bookers. There's all sorts of lists that you can acquire, and they're not always reliable. I'll say that. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're about a year or more outdated, but simply having a starting point can be pretty helpful. Like if you just have someone's contact, you can pretty quickly usually sort of snoop around online and figure out if they're still the relevant person in that role. Um, so again, having a starting place is better than no starting place. Um, if you have friends or industry contacts who have already built contact lists of their own, you should trade with them. Like maybe a band has already done a tour that you want to do. Well, ask them for all the contacts for the people at those venues along the way. And then, repay the favor for whatever information you have. And then Google, of course, Google can get you a lot of mileage, but you will want to cross reference that information with X, LinkedIn, the website for the show or the venue or whatever it is you're pitching for. But you can get a lot done there. And then the same thing is that Chat GPT can actually spit out some lists if you ask for a very specific type of gatekeeper or curator. But again, what I've noticed is um, the contacts usually outdated, but it's a good starting place to know even where to look. Conferences are great. So going to a local artist meetup or a genre-based conference, like you and I have gone to Folk Alliance International a lot. So if you're a folk artist, that's huge for one weekend and getting 200 people's contact info.
Hmm.
And I'm sure every big genre has a similar conference. And you mentioned social. Do you have anything more to say on that?
Yeah, I think social is easier than people realize, especially for music supervisors. I often go to their X account or their Instagram page, and they have like 200 followers, and they're working on a major TV show with a huge music budget, and no, barely have a following there. Again, I think the thing with social that you have to be very cautious with is if you just start spamming them there, that'll piss them off. But if you
Yeah.
start uh, connecting with them, or just leave them a note, say, "Hey, I've been loving the music in the bear." Like that's all you got to do, just to start the conversation. If they respond, then keep going back and forth. If not, maybe there's info about how to contact them, but just wait for your moment. Don't just pounce. Chris, you need to put the list back up because we've got an excellent comment here that goes with our very last one.
All right, let's see.
At Reverb Nation, we have opportunities, which if you are a member, you have access to. There's like 20 new opportunities a week. It could be from a sync placement, festivals looking for bands, just bookers looking for bands in general, media opportunities, record labels looking for artists. And Hakeem posted this. I pitched to a record label via the Reverb Nation's opportunities. I end up getting signed and charting on Beatport.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah.
That actually plays on another question here, which is how do I get discovered on Reverb Nation as an upcoming artist? So Reverb Nation gives you the ability to post your music and share it on the Reverb Nation platform. And you can use either your own kind of promotional tools or some of the tools that Reverb Nation has to drive attention there. But more pertinent to this conversation about opportunities is you can use opportunities as a feature. And like bring this slide up to do unlimited pitching. So if you're a Reverb Nation member, you can go to this page. Let me actually put a link to it in the comments. And we're updating it at least weekly, I think, with tons and tons of new opportunities, all the ones Kevin's just mentioned. And they're so simple to pitch to. It's usually 1 or 2 clicks. You want to still do the work of making sure your music is a good fit for it, obviously. But we've kind of taken out a lot of this middle ground by having a great team of curators to find good opportunities and then kind of automating everything in the middle. You just have to pair the song with the opportunity.
Yeah, the nice thing with how Reverb Nation is built, it's very much built around pitching music. There's a lot of marketing tools built in that pull from the platform and create, whether it's an electronic press kit or with the advertising portion of it, it's all optimized so you get better results because it's so tied into the profile. Same with the opportunities. And yeah, so it takes the relevant pieces and puts it in front of these tastemakers in order to simplify the process, and it's a great benefit. And um, Hakeem, if you're still watching, I would love for you to email us and get your testimonial, a little quote that we can add to the website.
That'd be awesome. And I put in the comments, you can check it out, this link here. That'll show you all the current opportunities, and we update them all the time. Check them out. Yeah, there's some really good ones. Like, I think a thing to reiterate is some of them are big things, like get signed to a label, play this festival, get a feature article in the Fader magazine, which are big things. Sometimes they're like, hey, get some radio play on this regional North Carolina radio station, which again is sort of like resume building pieces. So they're not all pie in the sky things. There's sort of everything, every gradation of opportunity in there.
Yeah. Yes. Do we have anything else, Chris?
Well, Hakeem's wondering who to email.
That's a good question.
Lest we
I'm trying to decide what email that it would best go to. You know what? Hit me up on Instagram, Hakeem.
Now that we've just said don't contact people through Instagram, contact us through Instagram
with a cold email.
Yeah.
Hit me up on Instagram. I'm just at K Bruner, the letter K Breuner, and I will deal with that offline. I don't want my email address broadcast on this.
No.
Not because of the artist. I'll end up on all sorts of lists and stuff, people that scrape the internet. So I hope this is helpful. It was inspiring for me to go through and put all this together and reflect on all the different pitches and that I've done, that I received, and Chris, I'm assuming it was similar experience for you, because I realized, man, this is so much of what we do.
Yeah.
And so much of what we don't talk about. Like any music conference for artists, you're going to hear about social media nonstop. You're not going to hear much about, hey, how to write an effective pitch so someone will actually give you an opportunity. That's really important.
Yeah. And it sounds like just simple communication advice, but we take a lot for granted. So sometimes it's good to just review the basics of making a good sales pitch. A lot of people are saying they enjoyed this and they're glad they tuned in. Thank you all for tuning in. It's a lot of fun for us to do. We're glad you're here. Thanks for all your questions.
Chris, do we have any insight about what next week will be? Because I'm going to be next Thursday. I'm going to be at Disneyland riding rides. I'm not going to be sadly, I will miss the music career study group.
I will be on here talking to my good friend, Michael Warner, who wrote a great book called Work Hard, Playlist Hard. And he'll be on here same time, 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, to talk about basically all the cool tricks and things you can do inside DSP dashboard. So Kevin, you and I sort of talked about that pretty quickly last week.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to discuss. And he knows, some of the platforms that I feel like we don't talk about as much, like Deezer and stuff like that. So he'll be here to enlighten us about everything you can do.
Yeah. It should be a good one. And I'm curious. I'm going to watch it afterwards because I'm curious to know. Mike has always stayed at the cusp of what's happening in the playlist world, and I need an update. Like, what is the lay of the land in the playlist world now? It feels like everyone. It was all playlists. All
third-party playlists are dead. The algorithm will take care of it all. We're all set.
Oh,
isn't that it?
Perfect. So I don't need to tune in. No, I think it'll be a great following up with Mike after this, because I know a lot of you are pitching for playlists, and you need to know what's going on in that world. That's partly why my question, because that big spreadsheet of playlists I was pitching to, that was a couple years ago. It was a big experiment and got some results, but I feel like what I did back then may not translate to right now. And I've got new music coming up. I'm gearing up some more pitches myself. And so I think that'll be a good one. So next week, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
And since you won't be here, do you want to tease what's in store for October, or should we not?
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
For
There's
October,
a huge thing coming up in October.
I forgot to, you've got what it's actually called.
Oh God, now I'm going to remember that. Let's see.
We have Rick Barker, who Rick has, we've had the opportunity to work with Rick on multiple occasions at conferences, on podcasts, and blog content. Rick is amazing. He got his start in the artist management world. Well, I don't know if he got a start, but he is known for being Taylor Swift's first manager, really launching her career. And he has amazing marketing advice. And like every time I talk to Rick, I'm like just taking notes. He's going to do a 4-part series in October for the Music Career Study Group. You won't want to miss it. And we have the details. We're going to be.
Yep. Okay. So it's called Turning Listeners into Lifelong Fans.
Yes. And when Rick says something like that, turning listeners into lifelong fans, he's not going to get on the Music Career Study Group and say, be authentic. He's going to give you real advice. And I've seen the outline for each installment. It's going to be great. And Rick loves answering questions, and he's very generous with his time.
And he has said he wants it to be very interactive. So he'll show up with a ton of notes and action items and stuff. And usually in his workshops, they're pretty interactive and people walk away having done something pretty cool.
Yeah.
But he also wants you to just ask questions as they occur. And it's a real-time workshop with Taylor Swift's former manager.
In our daily work life, we meet lots of people who give advice to artists. We also meet lots of people that their job is to market artists. And so many times I'm like talking to these people going, yeah, thanks, Captain Obvious. I'll post on social. That's your advice to artists on how to get a fan base. And post on social, but also be authentic, which that drives me freaking crazy when people say that. That says, I don't know. To me, when someone says be authentic, they're saying they don't know. But Rick is one of those people that every time I talk to him, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just insanely good information and light years ahead of what a lot of people are telling artists to do. Mm-hmm. It's work, but it's the kind of work that gets results and gets you excited because, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, me personally, I love doing stuff like work. If I feel like I'm getting results and it's driving towards a goal, that's fun. That makes work fun. And I think Rick outlines a lot of things that it's going to be work, but it's fun because you're actually seeing results. You're not just spinning your wheels. So that'll be starting the first week of October for the first 4 weeks. And it's going to be good.
It'll be awesome. All right. Well, I hope you have a good day off next week.
Yep.
And I'll be on here with Mike Warner. I hope everyone who's tuning in will be back, and tell your musician friends that they're welcome to participate, and see you then.
Yeah. Do you think Miles is still in the bathroom?
Miles, get to work.
Yes. We'll see you next time. Take it easy.
See y'all.